You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gloves Off on the very first Sunday in August. I have to say, this year is going by very fast. I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and Gloves Off, for those of you who are new, is a show about people who show up authentically, people who are courageous enough to live out their best life, follow their crazy dreams. And I love our guests because every week I have somebody that's doing exactly that. So for those of you who are new, that's what the show is about. I would love for you to pass this along to people that you know might be interested. And of course, for those of you who are returning and watching regularly, I'm so grateful for you. I personally know that I would never, ever forget doing this show because one of my friends literally gives me a countdown. It's like 3 hours to Gloves Off, 25 minutes to Gloves Off. So there's no way I could possibly forget. But anyway, every week we have a guest, and this week I'm so excited because I have Dr. Josh Makower. We met probably, I think it's been about 15 years ago. And at that time, I was practicing as an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. And you know what? The interesting thing is he said something to me that really changed the way that I view myself. Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell you what that is right now. You're just going to have to watch. But before we get into all that and my big introduction on Josh, which I may actually have to read because it's really long, I would like to thank our sponsors, Elevated CPA. Again, if you have a small business, if you have a large business, definitely consider having an accountant do your taxes because who wants to do taxes? All right. So now I'm going to actually have to read this bio because it is a little long, but I've done it shorter. So Josh is a professor of medicine, bioengineering at Stanford University of Medicine and Engineering. He is also the director and co-founder of the Stanford Byers Center for Biodesign. And he is the founder and executive chairman of ExploraMed. See, I knew I had to read this because it was going to be difficult. But he's also a senior advisor to Patient Square Capital. He has about 300 patents. He's launched about 10 companies in the last 20 years. So I will just have to bring him on here so he can tell you all about what he's been up to. Hey, Josh, welcome to Gloves Off. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kalpana.
Well, it's great to have you. This was the first time I've actually had to read the bio, and it was still hard. I'm like, oh, God. And it made it shorter. So I have to say that I teased it a little bit about what you said to me that changed the way I view myself. Do you remember what that was?
That I do not. I'm always a little afraid when people say that. I'm like, oh my God, what did I say? I hope it was good.
It was good. I would never say anything negative. But so when I first met you, it was at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, and it was in a Clarent, one of the first few Clarent conferences. It might have even been the first one, first or second. And I remember that I didn't know there was some big event going on, and I walked by because I didn't know about it. And then one of the reps had just dragged me in, and she said, "Oh, you didn't know about this?" And I was like, "No, what's going on?" She says, "You have to meet the founder of Eclairant." And I thought, "Oh, so I'm expecting, I'm expecting somebody that's 100." She introduces me to you. I don't remember what her name was. And we started talking, and you said, I was like, wow. I remember I was asking you about entrepreneurship and all these companies that, I was like, wow. And I was like, I'm just a doctor. And you were like, no, you have your own practice and you have, I don't remember if I had my med spa at that point, but I think I did. And you said, well, you're an entrepreneur as well. And I remember that very day because it's obviously very vivid in my mind, that whole interaction. And I thought, maybe I am not just a doctor.
That is true.
So it's
No one is ever a just.
I know, but in that moment in my life, I was just.
Right.
And it's funny how when you put that label on yourself, even
Yeah.
though I know being just a doctor is pretty good, but it's that just, I'm just this, I'm just that, with the implication that you can't change it, you can't
Right.
be more.
Exactly.
It's like a closed cylinder and it's done.
Exactly. That's what I spend a lot of my life doing, is just making people realize the potential that they have within themselves.
Oh, I love that. And one of the other things that I noticed about you and continue to notice about you is that despite all of the achievements and all of the wonderful things that you've done, you maintain this sense of humility, which isn't common, actually. I meet a lot of people that aren't that way. So, how and why is that?
Well, part of it is that I have always myself felt like the underdog, that I have to work harder, I have to try harder. It doesn't just come to me. Nothing comes to me easy. So I have to work for it kind of mentality. So that's just my own self. And so that also turns, and also I've been given a few, a few people in my life have really reached forward and helped me. And that's been so powerful for me. I just continue to want to do it for others.
Oh, that's beautiful. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that, that you feel like you're the underdog. I know that for all of us looking at you from the outside, we don't see that
Yeah.
struggle. This is often the case with people who are very high achievers. People
Yeah.
don't see the struggle.
Yeah.
So can you extrapolate a little bit
Sure.
more about what
I
that's
was, I, although I've never been diagnosed, I probably am at least partially dyslexic. It takes a lot of effort for me to get through large amounts of reading material. Embarrassingly, I have almost never read a novel myself because it's just work. It's just too much work. Of course, I read all the time. I'm reading emails. I'm reading, but it's not enjoyable. It's work. So growing up, I think most kids that have dyslexia, they struggle, and you don't do as well early on, all that kind of stuff. I didn't really find my own academic sort of power until I got into engineering school, where you know most of the engineers can't read and write, so I'm fit in perfectly. But no, I mean, I think there's a little bit of the um, always. I will tell you, when I was a little kid and we moved schools and I went in to get tested. The I was totally frozen by this test. I must have been like, I don't know, 5 years old, 7 years old, something like that, and maybe it was 7. and they were going to put me in the special class. And my mom came to the school and said, he's not going to the special class. He's going to be in with the rest of the kids, and fought hard for me, and it's just, I, I don't remember the exact details, but I think I just overinterpreted all the questions, and
Mhm.
that's been I think that's been a challenge for me, overthinking things.
Oh,
But
too.
anyway, I think coming up that way, it makes you, appreciate the struggle that people have, and that's sort of always been with me for a lot of my life. And nothing that, even though it looks like there's a lot of things that I've accomplished, there's also been struggles along the way. So, it's just about, just perseverance and getting yourself back together and putting the pieces back together and just trying to move forward and make it happen.
Well, that's beautiful. And shout out to your mom who didn't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
I had a similar story with my older son, and in that time, the teacher in the first grade, pulled me aside and had set up a meeting with me, and she told me that he's not very bright.
Right.
And the beautiful thing was, about 10 years later, I saw her. She was a patient in my office, and she asked me how my son was doing. And I'm like, you know what? He's in the top 5% of his class in the IB program. He's about to graduate. Remember the kid you told me was very, like, she told me
Right.
she wasn't very nice about it. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it wasn't kind. So it's interesting how we will want to put people in some sort of category or box.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful when we have somebody who is going to stand up for us and support us.
Yeah.
And we start to realize we don't have to be within those confines. We can choose to view ourselves in a whole different way.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. So as you were saying in the beginning, that's sort of realizing that you can do something and feeling empowered to go ahead and do it. I mean, it's amazing what people can do if they believe it's possible. You know,
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
the key. You have to believe
100%.
believe it, and then you can make anything happen.
So tell me how this happened for you. You went to engineering school, then you obviously went to medical school, you have an MBA. Did you know at that point this is what you wanted to do, or was it just one step at a time and it just came together, or
There
how did
was there was a one step of a time aspect of it, and that at any one time I'm kind of like looking at what's next. I Not a lot of people know this, but I started college as a music major.
well, that doesn't surprise me because you have the band and I know that you play and you play the
Yeah,
guitar and sing
right.
amongst everything else.
But I quickly switched. I just couldn't imagine myself and taking I had to take tons of loans. My parents were both teachers. We did not come from means. And the little that they were able to afford to put me through college, it just felt like it was an abuse. And I should do something better than just go to be, uh, you know, a music major. So I looked around and found engineering.
Hmm.
But it brought back for me the inspiration of, as funny as it is, this show called The Bionic Man. I don't know if you remember The Bionic Man,
Yes,
Bionic
I
Woman.
love that show.
That was actually a show that really inspired me, in that they were like superheroes. The
Mhm.
Bionic Woman and Man were superheroes, but they were real. Like, they were real people, and it was technology that enabled them to be super. And that technology seemed like that could actually possibly exist. And today, actually, a lot of those actually do exist, which is
Yeah.
super cool. So that was really inspirational. It wasn't so inaccessible, like someone who could fly or someone who could do beam cold beams with their eyes or something. This was actually real technology that could actually be developed in human bodies. So what's cool is, since we're doing this at home, I actually have. So I don't know what year this is from, but this little notebook was my first invention notebook when I was a single digit kid, and I wrote,
Oh my God.
you could see like in here, like all my writing about,
Wow.
using electricity to make the heart better and stuff like that.
Oh
So
my goodness.
got all, like all the ways that you could like do. You can't really see it, but
No, but that's so cool.
here I'm like stimulating the lungs, to make them breathe better, So this I saved this because
Wow.
but it's pretty amazing that even as a little kid, I was really fascinated with what I wound up doing for my whole career. But I refound it. I found it again when I was a freshman in college.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point because when I coach people, I often ask them to go back to their childhood and tell me
Mhm.
what they enjoyed doing because
Yeah,
we can bring a lot of those elements back into what the work that they're doing now. And if I think back to my childhood, the things that I love doing are the things that I still love doing today. And then we almost get it conditioned out of us for
yeah,
the longest time because that's ridiculous. You want to just sing or you want to do TV stuff or you want to do this. But every single thing I loved doing back then is the things that I went right back to now. And
yeah,
it's funny how that's the same way with you. And you were inventing things
exactly.
as a single digit kid and in the medical field too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, no, it was, and I still love it. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I love what I train people to do. There's so many mysteries to unlock uh,
mhm,
of the body. Uh,
mhm,
so it's like this, and yet everything that you do, which is in search of trying to make people's lives better,
mhm.
also has this other layer of benefit. You're not just, working on something that, I don't know, is going to turn out to be a piece of plastic that people throw away and forget they ever engaged with, but this is actually going to change lives. So I think that makes it so much more meaningful. So I'm very happy that I found this path, and I love turning people on, kids who are thinking about their careers and, coming to Biodesign or Stanford or wherever they engage around this to imagine, having a career that can actually be very successful, but also improve other people's lives. And that's just a triple benefit, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I could see, based on what you're showing me in that notebook, why you went to engineering school.
Right.
Then what led you, how did you decide to go to med school?
Well, I wanted to learn about the human body. I figured that if I'm an engineer, now that I was an engineer, that I wanted to have an experience that helped me understand how doctors think and
Mhm,
also gave me the basic education on everything medicine.
mhm.
And I couldn't think of a better way of getting that than going to medical school. The funny thing about that is, of course, as you know, they train you on how to be a doctor when you're in medical school. It isn't just like a survey course on the human body and disease. Right? So
No.
all the courses on how to, but I wound up loving medical school and I loved patients. I loved interacting with patients. I think the one thing you asked, earlier when we were chatting about what do I don't regret choosing this course that I have where I am working on technologies instead of actually working patient by patient. But the I did love that interaction.
Mhm.
I really it's a really special relationship that I really appreciate. And that's the one thing I miss about not practicing medicine is that I get a little bit of it because my family, since I'm the doctor in the family, people come. I get a little bit amongst my own family, but I do miss the being able to play like a really personal and important role in people's lives as you do as a physician.
Well, you could also look at it that you were called to create a greater impact because,
Yeah,
I always used to say this, and I was like, I loved seeing the patients, but it was a one-to-one impact. And I just felt for me that I wanted to impact in a bigger way.
yeah,
And that's really what you've done. You're impacting the lives of people with your medical devices to improve them.
yeah,
And obviously, a Clarent was the one that I knew about and had the
yeah,
most involvement with. But what an amazing, I mean, I was an ENT surgeon, I think at least a good 10 years before a Clarent and the balloon sinuplasty came
yeah,
out, give or take. Timing is a little fuzzy now. but,
yeah,
but anyway, I was always thinking there's got to be a better way to do this because we're so aggressive. And I just felt like we didn't need to be. I was always very much in my thinking was always keep as much of the anatomy intact as possible, but that's not how we were really taught. We were
Right.
taught to remove as much as possible, but then I have to say I modified that anyway. I
Mm,
just didn't want to be as aggressive as I was trained to be. And
right.
then comes this technology. And then I thought to myself, what if I could use it on this person or this person? And I love when medical devices come out because they give you the device, but they don't exactly tell you how you could utilize it. You almost have to figure it out.
That's
So
right.
I would just be very upfront and honest with patients. And I was like, I know you've been having these X, Y, and Z problems for so many years. What I love about this is that it's not going to cause any harm. So maybe we try it and see what
Yeah.
it does. And I found that people are getting such drastic improvements,
Yeah.
and it just was it was amazing. So,
Thanks.
and how did you? I think I sort of know the story how you
Yeah.
came up with it. It was from the heart catheterizations,
Yeah,
correct?
that's right. You know, John Chang and I, we co-founded Acclarent together, and we'd both worked at a company that I founded earlier called Transvascular. And in that company, we really, worked on a ton of different kinds of catheters and catheter technology. And but when we got back together after Acclarent, we wanted to go after something else. And I was actually myself a chronic sinusitis sufferer. And so that's what brought me to the field, looking at ENT itself. Um,
So you wanted to solve your own sinus issue.
well, I was like, I knew that I had these chronic headaches. I'd get a cold and it would turn into a 6 month long endeavor, of just trying to get behind it. And I thought we'd take a look at it. And I really didn't think that I would find anything that would be appropriate for me to solve because I'm not a drug development person. And when you think sinusitis, you think drugs. At least I did. But I was surprised to find how invasive even the minimally invasive surgery was.
Mhm.
And that explained why no one wanted to do that surgery on me because I was not I was in the acute recurrent category, if you remember that definition, which is sort of like not as bad as the baddest bad of chronic sinusitis, but you're sort of in the middle. And
Exactly.
really
Yeah,
nothing.
current infections, at least three to usually five or greater a year. So
Yeah, exactly.
resolved in between.
Right.
So
Results. Right. The chronic people, they never get
they
resolution.
never get better.
Um, but anyway, we looked at everything, but we knew that preserving the mucosal lining, which
Mhm.
is the inside of the nose, is very important, and that trying not to remove or damage tissues that are really not involved in the disease process. And as you know, functional endoscopic sinus surgery, which is the main approach,
Mhm.
actually removes a ton of tissue in the way just so you can get your straight tools to where they need to do to open up the sinus itself. And so by thinking about can you do something flexibly, that's where the idea of maybe you could use a catheter and wires and sort of technology that had been developed to treat the heart for sinusitis. And yeah, it worked. It
Yeah.
works.
It was a procedure that literally changed my practice. And the funny part was that it was really two big groups in town, where I practiced. And the other group really just thought it was a bunch of,
Right.
hooey, they were like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, people are coming to me because they want the minimally invasive sinus surgery. And next they start doing it. And I'm like, okay,
Exactly. I did get a chance
the
to
pioneer, but okay.
exactly. No, I did get a chance to sort of be with the company long enough to see people who were outright skeptics and completely naysayers and critical and also accusatory, like as if we were making it up or something, come totally around and then sort of say like they've been there from the beginning. So it was like, okay, I'm just happy you're using it for patients. I'm not going to try to recount what has actually happened historically. That's okay.
Exactly. And the beauty of doing something less invasive is I would always tell my patients, listen, we can always go more aggressive, but we cannot go less aggressive after we've gone more aggressive. So even if it fails, we've lost nothing. So, and
That is
people really got that and they loved it. And God forbid somebody didn't get the best results. There was always another option after that. But I loved doing balloons, and got to the point where I was only doing that in my practice, mostly doing my med spa and sinus work, and that was it because I was in my happy space. So I was like, why bother doing anything else?
It was fun to do. I mean, it was like, it really was bringing all these advanced technologies that had only been available to cardiologists to ENTs. It was like a candy store. You could really, we really were excited about opening that up for ENTs. Of course, now there's multiple competitors and all that stuff. We created that whole market, and
that's when it's good. So everybody starts to copycat you.
Exactly. A bunch of folks jumped in, but it's all right. I feel good about what we did, and I think we made a real, an improvement in care for patients. So that's the goal.
100%. And then you have so many other device companies as well.
Yeah.
Urology, cardiology, aesthetics. You even have a breast pump, right? There was even a breast pump.
The first wearable breast pump for moms.
Yes. I mean, these are just amazing technologies to improve people's lives and make them easier. I just love this. And we had talked off air about a device for cellulite. I know there are going to be viewers interested in that. So if you don't mind just expanding on that a bit.
Yeah. In fact, I might even, I actually do have one right here.
Great. Yeah.
I will go grab it. That's right. So this is so first thing to know about cellulite is most of what you've heard about it is not true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Doesn't appear because you're overweight. It can be more pronounced for people who have more weight, but it is not caused by that. Mm-hmm. It actually is something that probably forms in our early lives as the tissue of the skin is attached. But the attachments form with the lower things that are the muscles and sort of superficial fascia that your skin is attached to, and there's usually a fat layer. Now, when it tends to appear is when women go through puberty, their natural occurrence, the fat layer increases a little bit. That's not abnormal. Mm-hmm. But what that does reveal is when there are certain the other thing that's interesting for women, different than men, the structure between the skin and the superficial fascia is more regular and more dense for men for some reason, genetically, whereas women have a more irregular connection between their skin and their superficial fascia. And so what that does is sometimes the connections are a little more bunched up. So that tether between the skin and the superficial fascia is actually a little tighter. So when gravity acts on the skin, which, when you stand up, the skin, of course, moves down. And what's holding it back onto the body, to the superficial fascia, are these tethers. But if those tethers are somewhat irregular under the skin, it will appear as a dimple. And that's what that type of cellulite is caused by. It's really just this tether underneath the skin that is just a little bit tighter. And therefore the skin instead of the skin just falling nice and even, there's this one part of the skin that gets held back, and that appears as a dimple.
Okay.
And so always whenever we create these things, understanding basic physiology is always at the root of it. That's the only way you can solve these problems, is really understand. So 100%. This little tool, this is a very tiny tip. You can see it on my fingertip right there. Maybe
okay.
Right there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what this allows one to do is to get underneath. So with a little tiny opening under local anesthesia with a little injection, you can basically introduce this under the skin, let's say in the buttocks or thighs, and bring the device to where it needs to be. And the way you know where it needs to be, and I'm going to activate this thing here right now, you can see that little laser light. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that little light shines through the skin. And
sorry, I'm going to put you on so we can see that. Oh, no, I just did.
Yeah. So you see that? It's like a lightsaber right there. So that you can actually see when it's underneath the skin, you can actually see it appear. Like if I were to do this, see that little dot? It's so bright in this room, but see the dot right there? You can see it through the skin. And so what you do is now you've marked where your dimple was. Interestingly, most of these dimples disappear when the patient lies down. So you wouldn't be able to find it unless you marked it first. So now that you've marked it, you draw a little circle. And by the way, anyone on Instagram, and you may be watching this on Instagram, you could search Avily. You'll see tons of doctors. They post their cases. They post their results. The results have been amazing. Anyway, what happens is once you, and I'm going to do it in front of my shirt so you can see it. Once you're there, you deploy this little hook. You see that little hook there? Okay. That little hook that we just deployed here, I'll put it down again now and deploy it up. That lets you pull on the tether to test whether the tether that you are going after is actually the tether that is associated with the dimple. And what's interesting historically is it isn't always where you think it is. So if that's not it, then you release this, move it to another place, and then you put that up and you pull. Once you see, the dimple that I'm creating by pulling equals the dimple that was there beforehand, then you just press one more button, which reveals a very tiny little blade which cuts that little tether. That's all it is. And then the cellulite is gone. And the amazing thing that we saw when we first started experimenting with this is that the cellulite is gone instantly. We would have patients stand up because it's only local anesthesia, so they're fine. So we'd say, all right, we think we did it, stand up, gone.
And it's gone.
So that actually was proof of concept. And that it really, in my view, I'm biased, but I think it's the most successful cellulite treatment ever. And it's being offered by a number of, dermatologists, plastic surgeons across the country right now and growing. And it's approved by the FDA. But I'm very excited by it. And, finally something that doesn't cause a lot of bleeding or bruising.
Yes.
Something that can be done, with a single point entry, the entire buttocks and the upper thigh through that same little opening. And we usually put that little opening right in the crease of the buttock. So literally you could put a bathing suit on and go out, later in the week. No one's going to see any point of entry, because other technologies have multiple points of entry, and that creates all these like little scars, which mostly go away, but sometimes they don't. And then it looks like you were stung by a million bees.
And especially if you've got dark skin, you can hypopigment around those areas of scars.
Exactly.
So, darker skin, it can really be a bigger issue sometimes.
Exactly. So it's a really, really great alternative. And it was, fun to solve that problem.
So you're now all women's favorite person because you solved a big issue. Everybody loves Josh Makower for solving the cellulite problem. Well, because in the past there was, I don't know, they've never really done liposuction for it, but there's creams and all these things that never really worked. And then there are procedures that were much more invasive that involved, really quite a bit of downtime, having to wear the stockings and all that, or drains. I mean, who wants to go through that? Nobody. I mean, maybe some people do, but I wouldn't want to. So this is great because, personally, I would like to get one of those, maybe send me one, and I can just work on things.
Somebody else do it, though. You can't really do it.
I'm joking. For the audience out there, I am joking. Let me clarify. It should not be done by yourself. We in the aesthetics industry are a little weird when we have done things to ourselves. And that would be very, very difficult. Yes. But no, it's just such great technology because you can I love how you can see it through the skin, and I love how you can test the spot and then, clip that little fibrous band and get rid of the dimple so you know exactly where you are. I mean, it's amazing.
Exactly. Very focal, very fast, and really you can do multiple. Docs are doing both sides and multiple dimples on both the buttocks and thighs, within about a half hour worth of work. So
what about complications? Any major complications that have
there's always the opportunity for complications. It's rare, but most of them are procedurally oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And with the proper training, there shouldn't happen. But obviously, if you've got a lot of deep dimples in places, you're probably going to have more bruising. Just you have more things to snip, more bruising. There's the more little tiny blood vessels under there, so you will get that. That's probably the most common thing. And then I think doctors need to, when they're using it, they need to follow their instructions and really not put too many cuts all in the same area as well, just to make sure that they don't really create like a space like in that space underneath the skin. You want to take the offending tethers, but you really don't want to remove any of the good tethers, because we need the tethers to hold the skin on our bodies. And if it's not held on, it'll look like a little bulge. So then it goes the other way. It starts to bulge if you don't. So things like that we've investigated in the development process, but they can happen and in hands that may not be as experienced. But yeah, I think experienced hands, you're not going to see any of those.
So how do these ideas come to you? Do you just have an idea, or do you set out to solve a problem?
That question, it is actually turned out to be my entire career, which is that I have a process. I worked on creating a process for myself, and then I brought it to Stanford and partnered with Dr. Paul Yock to create the Biodesign program. And together we created an academic program around it. So I actually train people on how to do this. And you can look it up on my website, biodesign.stanford.edu. We have a textbook, but it is a process. And you can learn it. You can get good at it. Anyone can be an inventor. Anyone can solve really tough problems like those in medicine, but the same process is actually applicable to any big multifaceted problem. So I just say, like, this is accessible for everybody. I've done it a bunch of times, as you mentioned, but I've also trained other people to do it a bunch of times. People who had never invented anything before have created amazing companies and technologies and stuff using a method. And just briefly, that method is first know who you want to take care of. That's where it should be focused. So, it may be like in the case of the Willow pump, the first breast pump for women. Literally, same co-founder as a client. We sat down and we said, "What do we want to do?" And we said, "We want to do something good for moms." That's how the company started. And then we went looking at what are the problems. So then there's the need finding stage. What are the problems that moms, when they first get their babies, experience? What are their lives like? What are the big issues? And of course, breastfeeding and breast pumping comes up as like the number one issue.
Oh, yeah.
And then you dissect down. And so keep on going deeper to find the thing that really, if you solved it, would actually make a huge difference in people's lives. And each of these specialties, each of these clinical areas, that's what we focus on. And then once you've done that, you characterize it. You identify, okay, not only what does it take to, this is the insight for us, at least at ExploraMed, and for many of my students as well. It isn't only about solving the disease process. It's also about giving the patient something that they want. You might say, well, aren't those the same? Aren't they this, like if you solve the disease, doesn't that actually give them what they want? Well, it only does if you have a solution that does that. There are many solutions in medicine that leave people disabled. Look at the prostate one. The gold standard before we got involved in that specialty was a procedure that sometimes required a unit of blood afterwards.
Right.
We're often at a double-digit percentage was making people impotent and incontinent. That's not good.
No.
So, that's a great therapy because their flow rates, and they would say, look at the flow rates. The flow rates are amazing. Yeah, but, there's a few trade-offs here that aren't that ideal. So
100%.
it's looking at the whole patient and understanding what they want, and including the caregiver, the doctor, the environment, all those other things. So you stack all those things up, and that sets the criteria for what you should invent to. and try not to invent before you have visibility on all those things, so you don't fall in love with the wrong solutions. And that's just the high level on the.
And it's good to know there's a process. So, and then this is a course.
Yes, it is. So you can access this content in different ways. If you're an undergrad, we have trained faculty and fellows. They've spread across the world, and there's like over 50 biodesign programs now across the world.
Wow.
We're using the textbook and same sort of process. Ourselves, we're training about 500 people a year. There's undergrads, graduate students. We have a full-time fellowship, about 12 innovation fellows, 3 policy fellows. And then we also train faculty across Stanford campus. But we have a global program, which includes the US, and we train faculty from other institutions across the world so that they can take their learning back and start their own biodesign programs. There's biodesign programs literally in almost every major country across. Yeah.
That's really amazing. I have to say, on a personal note, I wish I had that wearable breast pump when I had my kids, because I don't know if you know this, but I had both my children in my ENT residency. So I remember starting this is kind of a funny story, but it's gloves off, so we can talk about it. But I was starting a laryngectomy, bilateral neck dissection. I was the chief resident, so I was doing the whole case, obviously with my attending. And, long case, I had just had a baby and I was breastfeeding. And I look at him and I said, I have to break scrub. And he looks at me and he goes, why? And I said, I've got to pump. It's the most embarrassing thing, but it was just, I couldn't move my arms anymore. And I was in so much pain. And having a wearable breast pump at that point would have been fabulous.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. In fact, I just, and I follow, what people post on it on Instagram, because I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I'm going to see if we can find this post that just recently came up. Women were basically going through and talking about all of the things that they have done with while pumping. And it's been running the New York Marathon, dealing with the trauma case, about to go bust, to be involved in a raid of, so obviously some, maybe Department of Justice or FBI person, I know that it's been Arctic explorers, it's amazing to look at that and realize, and often when I mention this, like you were saying, many surgeons will come up to me and say, this saved my residency.
It really is a thing, because again, women have to deal with all these extra things. And even when I was at work, my husband had the kids taken care of, but that was still something I couldn't really escape. I had to do that. And I have to say, if having something like that, I might have breastfed longer. It just became such a hindrance, because I had to find a space to go do it. I was only female resident, of course. So, having to explain why I was leaving, after a while, I just would look at my attending, he'd know, and I just escape and leave. But these are just difficulties that give us setbacks. And to not have that really makes a huge difference. So, wow. That's phenomenal. I love that you follow the posts and are watching what women are doing with this, because now they could it's just a quick little thing that they don't really have to worry about or pay any even mental attention, having to think about when you're going to do it, when you're going to escape. It's a lot.
Exactly. And, like you said about naysayers, when we first put it together, we went to go talk to Medela, who's the behemoth in the space and everything. And they totally poo-pooed it. Like, this is a toy. No one's ever going to want to do this. This is ridiculous. And they had no interest. And to this day, they still haven't introduced one. Although I hear that they're working on one, but this is, it's what changes. But by the way, most breast pumps now are wearable.
Wow. So after they poo-pooed it,
so they need to. They're going to have to catch up.
I love that.
We didn't have so many competitors because we did bring a lot of competitors in the space, but in the end, it's all good for moms, and that's what we were trying to do, and being followed and sometimes copied, which there's legal means to deal with the true copiers, but I would say that that's what it's all about in innovation. You just got to keep on looking ahead, and you can't look back, and you need to keep on making whatever you have better, so that it's you're doing the best thing for patients. So.
Well, it takes a specific kind of mindset to always be looking at where the gaps and the holes are in our treatment and what we're doing. Most people aren't really able to do that. So I love that that's just the way that you think. It's probably something you never noticed because maybe it's always been the way you are.
Yeah.
But I love that because that's what really fuels and drives innovation.
Yeah.
And most people are just thinking whatever is existing is fine.
Exactly. And that's literally what we train people to do. We train people on how to see the thing that isn't there, and for signs and symptoms of situations where there's a need just calling out that maybe someone hasn't really listened to. And, as a surgeon, I mean, how many times did you say, "Hey, why are we doing it this way?" And you got the answer like, "That's just the way we were trained to do it." Like as if that makes it right, right? And most of the time you're like, "Okay, well, that's what we do." Like, and that means everyone's switched off their brains. It's just the way we do it, and stop asking questions and get back to work. And that's what we're dealt with. But if you understand that those are code words for opportunity, then you suddenly, whenever you hear it, it's like, whoop, wait, what would you just say? Because
it's opportunity.
Whenever people give you dogma, that means that they don't want to think about how to fix it.
Well, I have to say, it was always troublesome for me because I was always that way. I wanted to know why we were doing something. Why weren't we thinking about another way? Why weren't we trying? And I always got the same answer. The research supports this. And I'm like, but does that mean that we cannot try another way?
Right.
I mean, I just never really bought into that paradigm of, again, I would never put anybody at risk by trying something. But if there was something we could try that wasn't necessarily risky and gave an option of somebody feeling better, why don't we try those? But it's funny that I feel like, and I don't know what medical programs are like anymore. It's been a while for me, but we just really I just found that a lot of it was just, we do this, this, and this without even thinking through why.
Of course. Well, when you're a busy physician, you don't have time.
Right.
And also patients, I would say, they sort of want what the other person got. I mean, they don't want a physician to come in and say, I'm going to invent something for you. I don't know if it's going to work. They want stuff that's proven. So it's not exactly normally set up for people who want to make change and create things. But the opportunity that we have, for those that can step out of that and just dedicate some time, that's where you look around, you open up your eyes. And this isn't just medicine, but certainly medicine has a lot of this. And you go, why the heck are we doing it that way? Why don't we couldn't there be a better way? And then once you start asking that question, you're already on the path of this process. That is the beginning. We need a better way for this group of patients to accomplish this better outcome than they're getting today, And that is the starting, what we call the need statement. That's the initial valuable asset that one creates in this process that sets you up for the whole process thereafter.
I feel like this is something I'm interested in.
Cool.
And to be like, all right, let's see what kind of devices we could create.
Water's fun.
It'd be so fun.
Yeah.
I have an idea book. I mean, for the longest time, I had all these ideas and I would just start writing them down. Like, I got this idea for this business and that business. And I was like, I've really got some shiny object syndrome problems. And then I had to, really just control myself and stop coming up with crazy ideas and just focus on the ideas that I had.
You're doing a great job. That's for sure.
That's amazing. So would you say that you have, so looking at your life's work, you've obviously done so many things, been so successful. There's always a trade-off. Is there anything that you would go back in time and feel like you wish you would have done differently, done better, anything like that comes up for you?
Yeah. all the time. I mean, I wish that I wasn't still learning, but I still am. And
That's a good thing.
so, but at some point, you're just like, do I have to learn this tough lesson now?
Oh, tough lessons. Yeah, those are not
Just
fun.
be like, like know how to do it and not continuously get challenged with problems that are, come at me from left field and are so difficult to solve. So yeah, I mean, I'm still in that mode. I'd say most of the
But do you solve them? You do, don't you?
I do most of them.
Okay.
Some I can't. I mean, and I will say, just all of my projects have not been successful. I've had some great successes, which I'm very happy for, which I appreciate having the opportunity to have those because,
Mhm.
I've also faced the other side. We've had, company that we had to shut down. We have had a few that we sold for less than what we was invested in it. I mean, those things happen, and I don't like it. I'll fight like hell to avoid it. But then, at some point comes that, acceptance reality. Like we have tried everything, and it's like, what else can we think of? Is there anything? Is there anything? And, you just sort of face like, okay, this is where we are, and you face reality and you do the best you can. And always we try to, if we have a good therapy, we just try to make sure the therapy winds up with in the hands of somebody who can do something good with it, so it's not like a total waste. But I had a company that was shut down that no remnant, it was in the obesity space, it was called Vibrant. That's
Mhm.
probably the only company that there is no, living remnant of whatever we worked on that still exists. And you have to face that. It's part of being an innovator. Not everything works, and not everything's going to be successful, but you just gotta try your best.
And I think that's such an important point
Yeah.
that looking at somebody with all of the things that you've been able to accomplish, I think it's so important for all of us because we all tend to be very, very hard on ourselves. And I remember when I used to pride myself on the fact that I haven't had any failures until I had some big failures.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that was silly that I was saying that. But I have to say that, they were challenging and my life was very difficult during those times. But I would say that I learned the most
Yeah.
during those times. I mean, we never grow when we're up, we always grow when we're in that down period. So I'm sure each one of these things that did not turn out the way that you would have liked, which clearly you have more successes than failures. And that's the goal. We're going to have failures. Let's just have more successes than failures and learn from our failures. Or
Exactly.
I don't even like to call them failures, but
Yeah. I think say mostly the biggest look, people are everything. I often say that, and it really is true. People will help you be successful, and people can also take you down. And
that's
that is the reality. So,
so
um,
true.
and I think if I've made mistakes, I probably didn't act on, when I really saw someone was not working out, I, probably waited too long. I gave them too many second chances. I did all those things, and it wasn't the right thing. I've tried to be a little bit more, um, you know, proactive than that, through all this learning, but it's usually been something like that. Someone who you thought could do a job, you put them into that role, and they really can't do that job, and then how long does it take you to actually make a change? And I think those things are hard. Especially for someone like me. I care about people. I care about their families. I think about those things. It isn't. It does not. I'm not just like a
Right.
where
Well,
you're.
you also see the best in people. I feel that you see
Yeah,
the best in people, you see their full potential, but
exactly.
then we cannot control where that person is on their journey. You may see the potential, they're not ready to reach it. That's not something you can do anything about. So,
Correct.
but the important thing is that you give people that opportunity, which is so commendable, and that you have really evaluated the things in your life that didn't go quite the way you would have liked. And that's what I really like to leave our audience with today, because we all face struggles in our life. And just when you think they're over, there's more. It's
Yeah.
just how life goes. And
Sure.
I always tell people, I say, my goal is to be like you could have a ship that's in the ocean and there's all these waves and that big ship doesn't move. I say my goal is to be the dinghy in the ocean.
Right.
And no matter how big the waves are, I'm still slow and steady and calm as possible. That's my goal.
Perseverance, I will say, the single most important characteristic for success.
Oh yeah.
If you want to pick one, that's it, because there's always there's always a reason to give up and always reason to turn back, reason to fold. And if you can just figure out how to navigate around the challenges, listen, learn, iterate, navigate. It doesn't have to be your same original idea the way you thought of it in the original without listening to anybody. You have to listen. But if you just persist, that is in my own career, that's been characteristic of the winners. When we have won, it's been against almost all odds, overcoming. I mean, I'm sure you remember the challenges we had with reimbursement of McLaren.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the powerful forces that were assembled to try to take us down.
Oh
and
yeah.
fought those like crazy, and we won. But we were near death. We had a number of near death experiences where they would have changed the coding situation. We couldn't have get doctors paid. We couldn't have been able to reimburse patients for their procedures. I mean, there was a dire threat at one point in time that we overcame, but it was only through perseverance, obviously throwing all the smarts you can at it, but sticking with it and not giving up, always believing in what you're doing.
I think those are beautiful words to end on because we are running out of time, and perseverance, everybody, that's the key. I can't thank you enough. That was such valuable insight that you gave all of us, especially me, which I feel like I'm just getting soaking up all your wisdom here firsthand. And it's been a pleasure knowing you for all this time and watching what you've been up to. And I can't say enough. So it's been my honor to interview you on my show. And I, look forward to all of the amazing other things that you continue to do.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here too, and congrats on this amazing program and everything you're doing, Kapana.
Thank you so much, Josh, and you have a fabulous rest of the evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. He is just such an inspiration. I think that's my favorite word to use about Josh Makower. And, I hope you learned something from it. That last quote is going to be on my YouTube channel because I thought that was gold right there at the end. And for next week, I'm going to be interviewing Jeffrey Deskovich. He was actually convicted of murder, spent about 17 years in prison, and then was exonerated by DNA evidence. So we're going to deep dive into that story next week. So until then, I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your day. Happy Sunday, and I will see you next week on another episode of Gloves Off.